There was a time when $220,000 would be enough to buy the best house in town. These days, that buys the average house in Toronto. Real estate prices have been going through the roof for several years in Toronto. It's at the point now that some people are even passing up promotions because it would mean having to move there. Neil McDonald reports.
Toronto has become Canada's golden city. It's a powerhouse, right in the middle of the fastest growing economy in the world. Moving up the corporate ladder at a lot of Canadian companies means moving here. To crack the housing market in Toronto's core, you now have to be wealthy. For the average income earner, a transfer to Toronto is not a happy prospect.
It's a terrible sentence to be sentenced to move to Toronto from the point of view of finances.
Ben de Jong had to say no. A month ago, he was offered a much better job in Toronto with an American multinational. The pay was higher, and the company was willing to give him an interest-free second mortgage. De Jong and his wife looked at homes in Toronto for 2 days, and they turned around and headed straight back to London, Ontario.
I was a kind of basically disgusted at what we would be buying for the money we would have to outlay.
In most other Canadian cities, these rather unremarkable homes would cost about $130,000. Make that about $330,000 here in one of Toronto's prime areas. According to the consulting firm Runsheimer Canada, Toronto's cost of living is going right out of sight, and the housing prices are what's doing it. Runsheimer estimates that a family of 4 living in a Toronto suburb now needs an income of $67,000 a year to comfortably afford a 3-bedroom home. In Calgary, the same lifestyle would cost $52,000. In Halifax, about $53,000. In Winnipeg, $57,000. And in Vancouver, $56,000. In March, Doug Harpel finally moved from Thunder Bay to Toronto with Ontario Hydro.
We thought really to some extent it was not quite a now or never, but pretty close.
He and his wife bought into this suburban condominium north of Toronto. It cost $100,000 more than they got for their house, and they don't have a yard and driveway anymore.
It still is a little disappointing to actually go and see what you get for what you pay firsthand and have to make some choices.
Alan Topping of Runsheimer Canada says Toronto's housing spiral is hurting company plans to transfer employees.
There are a number of turndowns now if the assistance to maintain a standard of living that they've been accustomed to is not provided for the employee.
Most companies won't talk about how much they spend to subsidize employee transfers to Toronto, but they usually don't make up the whole difference, and that gap just keeps on growing. More and more people are choosing this option, living 50 kilometers out of town and staring at somebody else's bumper for 2 hours a day. Neil McDonald, CBC News, Toronto.